Hello everybody, Mannix here. This is going to be a knife review that most people are not going to find very exciting. However, I find it kind of exciting. It's on a cheap knife, and it's a very bizarre looking knife to some of you probably. This is the MTech MX-8018. And the reason this is kind of a special little knife review is because this is a knife I've had for years and years and years. One of the first folding knives I've ever got. And it's really actually not bad for the money. The biggest problem is the blade steel itself, as you can probably expect. You can get these anywhere from like 9 to at the very most like $15 shipped online in places like eBay and Amazon and stuff. And like a lot of the MTech models, I think a lot of them are pretty cool looking, but you know, the biggest problem with all of them is always going to be the blade steel. Now, as far as their quality goes, usually their fit and finish is pretty good, their hardware is okay, everything's, you know, pretty sound, and they're functional knives, they carry okay, everything's pretty good with the MTechs, but the biggest thing with cheap knives is the heat treatment and the quality of the blade steel. And that's the whole point of the knife, is to cut stuff. And if your edge dulls very quickly and it's very difficult to resharpen it, that's a big downside. That's usually why you just want to spend the extra $10 or whatever it is, get like, you know, a Gonzo or a San Renmu, or even like the cheaper, you know, the Spyderco Tenacious line or the Bird lines, or there's Kershaw's out there. If you just spend like 20, 25, you know, closer to 30, you can get some really much better stuff. And that's why knives like these that are like below $15 usually aren't worth it at all. It's best just to spend the extra 5 or 10 and get something with a blade that you can actually resharpen. Not saying you can't resharpen these blades, but it's difficult, generally speaking. But this is just a knife I saw when I was in middle school, I think, when I was first getting into folding knives. I lusted after it online. I was like, oh, that's so weird looking, that's so cool. I love the weird curved serrations, and the whole idea behind it is that it's a rescue knife. And I finally got it, and I'm actually really surprised with it's extremely smooth. It has a solid lockup, a little bit of side to side, no up and down at all. Really smooth. It feels higher quality than it really is. And a little flipper right here, although it's not that successfully done like a lot of the cheaper knives. Let's get on with the specs real quick. So, close length to the handle length is 4.75 inches. That's including the glass breaker back here. Blade length of 3 inches on the nose. Overall length coming in at 7.75 inches. And then, according to my scale, it weighs 3.8 ounces. We have aluminum scales right here with one stainless steel liner. That's where the liner lock is. We have a stainless steel glass breaker. Flow-through design. Pillar construction. Again, 440C bead blasted blade steel. Tip down only carry. It's that same standard cheap pocket clip that you see in a lot of knives. Not too great looking, but it works, it's functional. Comfortable enough, not the most comfortable knife in the world, but it's okay. Right here is a hot spot. The ridges on the jimping right there. The idea behind this is that it's a rescue knife. So, as you can see, there is no tip. The tip, it's like a gut hook, they sometimes call it. It's all the way down here, so you can cut open boxes and stuff by using that, but it's not very easy. It's not designed for that. It's supposed to be cutting rope. You know, being the whole theme behind this knife is a rescue knife. And the reason I did want to make a review on this knife, even though, like I just said, the blade steel is not going to be great and it's not going to last forever, the idea behind cheap knives for emergency situations or defense is pretty smiled upon throughout the EDC community, because the thing is, if it's for an emergency only, you're not going to use that knife until that emergency arises. So get your knife really sharp, and then when it happens, then you use it. It's very unlikely it's going to dull on you during the situation. I don't think it's not going to dull that fast. But a lot of people do that. They'll get like a cheap MTech or a Smith & Wesson knife or something for like self-defense, and they'll get it really sharp, like one of those neck knives. And then if, you know, heaven forbid, but if that thing ever happened where they needed to use it, it will still cut pretty well. It'll last long enough for that. That's kind of the idea behind this knife too. You have a little seat belt cutter, I forgot to mention that. It's probably really bad, I never tested it, but I'm sure it'll work with enough force. You know, when they add seatbelt cutters and like glass breakers and stuff, it's, even if they're only okay or they're not that great, it's never a bad thing. You don't usually lose anything because of it. So, but yeah, I basically just got this knife because I thought it was really weird, goofy looking, but it was kind of cool. I like this circular serrations right here because these you can actually resharpen. Again, I mean, if the blade steel were a bit better, then it would matter more. It doesn't matter as much, but I wish more knives would use this kind of pattern on their blades. As far as their serrations go, I don't like the weird little triple pointed ones. They snag on things. They're basically impossible to resharpen. These are much cooler. I like them. And once these are sharp, they actually are very, very functional when cutting through fibrous materials, and just materials in general. I like these a lot. The idea of the orange is a nice friendly color. So the whole idea behind a rescue knife, it's a very friendly looking knife. It's very rounded, and the handle kind of, you know, the lines to the handle complement the blade itself as well. So it's a nice looking knife, I think. As weird as it is. For what it's trying to be, it excels at, I think. And again, no tip on there, so if you're trying to cut, if someone was tied up or whatever, oh no, and you're trying to cut through the rope, you won't, you won't have any issues like stabbing into them or anything. So again, I like it's a very round, curvy knife. There's almost no points anywhere. It's very round and curvy, besides like the glass breaker right here. Now, glass breakers are cool. These do work. I never tested this one in particular, but on another MTech that had one, I tested it, and it worked a long time ago. But I've heard from people who actually use these things, like firefighters and stuff, they've used a knife and they used a glass breaker that was that close on the glass, and they said they ended up having to get a whole bunch of stitches in their hand. Maybe that's a user error. I don't know. I don't know. But either way, here you go. So again, smooth, has a good lockup. I like the thumb studs on here. They're round on the top, but they're very thick and cylindrical, easy to get to. You can choke all the way up here if for some reason you wanted to do that. It's just a knife that I feel like deserves a video. As cheap as it is, and even if it's not so great, there's a much worse out there. Maybe this is just a good one. Maybe I got a really good MTech, and maybe this particular model, the MX-8018, other people get theirs, and there's blade play issues, and the screw strips really easily, and the lockup's not good, or whatever. But this one, I happen to be really happy with. It's one of my favorite cheap little knives. It's just cool, I think. So, anyway, for the money, you can't really go wrong. There's not really any like rescue style folders. There's not a whole lot. But if you were just to spend the extra $5 to $10, you can get something a lot more worth it. But it's still kind of cool. I just wanted to make a little video on it.